Lesson 7. An architect for the environment.
Page 78. Keywords. New words.
Architect. Environment.
Page 79. Read and think. Part 1. New words.
Enemy. Permanent. Temporary. Survivor. London.
Now, listen to part 1.
A building made of paper.
Page 80. Part 2. New words.
Traditional.
Now, listen to part 2.
Paper can be strong. The traditional Japanese umbrella called bangasa.
Pages 81 and 82. Part 3. New words.
Exhibition.
Now, listen to part 3.
Where did the idea of using paper tubes in architecture come from?
Pages 82 and 83. Part 4. New words.
Encourage.
Now, listen to part 4.
Mr. Bunn had been thinking about what an architect could do for society.
Pages 86 and 87. Grammar. Listen.
B1. 1. Many people ask Mr. Bunn if he started using paper tubes because he was thinking of ecology. B2. 1. As well as being used for permanent buildings, paper was also used to build temporary houses. B3. 1. Mr. Bunn had been thinking about what an architect could do for society since he first went to study in the United States.
Page 88. Function. Listen.
C1. 1. Shall I help you with your work? C2. 1. What is a paper building like?
Lesson 8. Lessons from a tomato plant.
Page 90. Keywords. New words.
Inherent.
Page 91. Read and think. Part 1. New words.
Gene.
Now, listen to part 1. Could a single tomato plant produce tens of thousands of tomatoes? Pages 92 and 93. Part 2. New words.
Soil.
Now, listen to part 2. Ordinary tomato plants are grown in soil, but pages 93 and 94. Part 3. New words.
Secret.
Now, listen to part 3. How can such a miracle happen? Pages 94 and 95. Part 4. New words.
Thought.
Now, listen to part 4. Mr. Nozawa showed us through his giant tomato plant Pages 98 and 99. Grammar. Listen.
B1. 1. Mr. Nozawa showed us that we ourselves have some inherent power. B2. 1. Mr. Nozawa's system made it possible to produce large amounts of tomatoes. 2. Don't give up even if you find it difficult to finish the job. B3. 1. It stays hidden because of limits in the environment.
Page 100. Function. Listen.
C1. 1. Tomatoes are a healthy food.
I agree.
C2. 1. I made up my mind to become a sports trainer in the future.
Lesson 9. Where is Santa Claus from?
Page 104. Key words. New words.
Santa Claus.
Page 105. Read and think. Part 1. New words.
Originate.
Now, listen to Part 1.
Did you know that the person we now call Santa Claus originated from a saint called Saint Nicholas who lived in present-day Turkey?
Pages 105 and 106. Part 2. New words.
Dutch.
Now, listen to Part 2.
You may, however, wonder how Saint Nicholas, a Turkish saint, became Santa Claus. In fact, the name Santa Claus comes from the Dutch Sinterklaas, which means Saint Nicholas.
Page 107. Part 3. New words.
Clement Moore.
Now, listen to Part 3.
In 1822, in New York, Clement Moore, a school teacher, wrote a famous poem called A Visit from St. Nicholas. This poem described a new image of St. Nicholas who visited children on the night before Christmas.
Pages 108 and 109. Part 4. New words.
Virginia O'Hanlon.
Now, listen to Part 4.
As a child, you must have wondered, is there a Santa Claus? About
Pages 112 and 113. Grammar. Listen.
B1. 1. He went to live in Myra, where he became a bishop. B2. 1. As a child, you must have wondered, is there a Santa Claus? 2. Mark is in Hawaii now. You cannot have seen him in Tokyo. B3. 1. Did anyone ever see fairies dancing on the grass?
Page 114. Function. Listen.
C1. 1. I guess it's just another day to have a good time. Like C2. 1. For instance, a Santa Claus came to the party in samurai clothes.
Lesson 10. A Mason-Dixon Memory.
Page 116. Key words. New words.
Mason.
Page 117. Read and think. Part 1. New words.
Recently.
Now, listen to Part 1.
I recently heard a news story about a black student who was not allowed to play golf at a club because of his color.
Pages 118 and 119. Part 2. New words.
Lincoln.
Now, listen to Part 2.
Our hotel was not far from the Lincoln Memorial. My roommate was Frank. Leaning together out of our window and dropping water balloons on tourists, we quickly made friends with each other. The next morning, a teacher said,
Page 120. Part 3. New words.
adventure, relief, escape.
Now, listen to Part 3.
Back in my room, I lay down and began to cry. It wasn't just missing the class adventure. And moreover, for the first time in my life, I was learning what it felt like to be black. What's the matter?
Page 121. Part 4. New words.
Envelope,
Now, listen to Part 4.
That night, a teacher came to our room, holding an envelope.
Pages 124 and 125. Grammar. Listen.
B1. 1. A teacher came to our room holding an envelope. B2. 1. He was happy to have escaped punishment. He was happy that he had escaped punishment. 2. She seems to have been a famous doctor. It seems that she was a famous doctor. B3. 1. They won't let me go to Glen Echo Park tonight.
Page 126. Function. Listen.
C1. 1. Can you explain that more clearly? C2. 1. I understand how you feel. I know how you feel.
Lesson 11. To make the earth a better place to live in.
Page 128. Key words. New words.
Disaster,
Page 129. Read and think. Part 1. New words.
associate,
Now, listen to Part 1.
We often associate the words humanitarian aid with disasters such as wars and earthquakes, and imagine that hard-working relief teams set up places for refugees and give food to starving people.
Pages 129 and 130. Part 2. New words.
Madhu, Colombo,
Now, listen to Part 2.
Dr. Tomoko Kanto, the first Japanese doctor who joined MSF.
Pages 130 and 131. Part 3. New words.
cure, medical, precious, oxygen, incurable, choice, upset, recommend,
Now, listen to part 3.
For example, I examined a child with a serious disease. When I saw the child,
Pages 132 and 133. Part 4. New words.
Status.
Now, listen to part 4.
probably you may wonder why Dr. Kanto joined MSF.
Pages 136 and 137. Grammar. Listen.
B1. 1. If this had occurred in Japan, B2. 1. MSF recommends that medical staff should stay for only 6 months. B3. 1.
I think it was I who was helped. I think it was I that was helped.
Page 138. Function. Listen.
C1. 1. What do you think of it?
It's terrible. It's awful.
C2. 1. In the end, volunteers help people, and they also gain something themselves. 2. After all, we will have to study more about it. Finally, we will have to study more about it. In conclusion, we will have to study more about it. 3. All things considered, we need more time to discuss the matter.